November 1908. 6 of us were sent into the hills of Romania to check on a village that had stopped answering letters and tax notices. We carried rifles, food, and expected to find sick people or a blocked road, but the cart on the trail had been left behind. No smoke came from the valley. The village watched us without showing faces. Then a barefoot boy stepped forward and told us the dead had been locked inside the church, and at night they began to move. So before we continue, tell me one thing in the comments. Are you watching alone, or is someone with you? And please make sure you leave a like and let us know where you're watching from. Thanks. The order came to our army building in Bau in the first week of November 1908. I had been in the army 3 years and had learned that most messages had a reason behind them, even when they were written in careful, clean words. This one was short and worried. A village in the hills had missed its tax collection date, missed the church register pickup, and missed 2 scheduled deliveries. A mail runner had turned back after seeing the road blocked by a fallen cart and no one coming out to clear it. A priest from the next church area rode there, found the church locked, and returned without going inside any home. He reported a smell near the well and said he heard movement behind a window shutter. The leader wanted it checked before rumors reached the markets. We were 6, Lieutenant Mirishin, Sergeant Petrescu, myself, and 3 soldiers, Toma, Ianu, and a doctor named Dumitru, who had been attached to our group for flu season. The lieutenant was young, clean-shaven, and eager to show he could handle a problem without asking for more men. Petrescu was older and carried his experience on his shoulders. Toma was quiet and steady with a rifle. Ianu had joined in the spring and still watched everything with open interest. Dumitru did not talk much, but he looked closely at faces and hands and kept his bag packed in the same order every time. We left before dawn on a gray morning, each of us with a rifle, a full bag of bullets, and a day's food. We had 2 horses and a cart with blankets, lanterns, extra oil, and a small shovel. The air held a wet cold that made the leather straps stiff. The road out of town was rough and lined with bare trees. Beyond the last houses, the fields were empty except for cut grass and a few crows that lifted in short hops when we passed. The lieutenant rode at the front with Petrescu walking beside the cart. I walked on the left side where I could see the ditches. The 2 horses pulled in a slow, even rhythm. Ianu kept moving between the cart and the rear, trying to keep warm. Toma stayed back with Dumitru and watched our trail. After an hour, the sun rose but gave no heat. We reached a fork with a broken signpost, and the lieutenant checked the paper again. Volosayaka, he said. 2 more hours by road, then the track. Petrescu spit into the mud and wiped his mouth. The track will be worse. We moved into higher ground where the road narrowed and the trees thickened. The cart wheels sank deeper. When the horses pulled, the harness creaked and the wheels made a wet sucking sound. We passed a small shrine at the side of the road, a wooden box with a painted picture behind cloudy glass. The paint was fresh enough that the face still looked clear. Someone had left a bunch of dried herbs tied with string. Iana touched his cap and kept walking. My grandmother used to leave those on the road, he said, to keep sickness away. Dumitru glanced at him. Herbs do not stop the flu. They stop their fear, Iana said, then looked embarrassed and fell silent. We ate a piece of bread while walking. I tried to focus on normal details. The weight of the rifle, the damp seam of my boot rubbing my heel, the smell of horse sweat. It helped. If you let your mind run ahead, you started seeing trouble in every shadow. Near midday, we met the first sign that the village had not been living normally. A wagon stood half off the road, one wheel broken, the shaft stuck in the ditch. It was the cart the mail runner had described. It was loaded with sacks of grain, damp from rain. The sacks had been cut. Grain had spilled into the mud and been stamped flat. No one had tried to save it. The lieutenant got off his horse and walked around it. Petrescu bent near the ditch and looked at the mud. "What do you see?" the lieutenant asked. "Tracks," Petrescu said. "Many old ones and newer ones. People went back and forth. No horse. Boots mostly. Some bare feet." "Bare feet?" I said. Petrescu nodded without looking up. "Children maybe, or people who did not bother with shoes." Toma pointed with his rifle barrel toward the trees. "No birds," he said. I listened. In the lower country, we heard crows and small birds. Here, there was only wind through branches and the slow breathing of the horses. The lieutenant straightened. "We keep moving," he said. "No one is hiding a broken wheel from us. We need answers." We pushed the cart past the wagon. The road turned into a track that climbed between pine trees. The ground changed from mud to wet leaves and stones. The horses struggled, and their sides trembled. Petrescu and I put our shoulders behind the cart to keep it from sliding back. The lieutenant walked ahead, stepping carefully, not wanting to show he was tired. As we climbed, the air became sharper. A thin mist moved through the trees enough to blur distance. My breath came out in short clouds. Iana's lips had turned pale, and he rubbed his hands hard, then flexed his fingers around his rifle handle. After another hour, we found the second sign. A dog lay beside the track, ribs showing under its fur. At first, I thought it was sleeping, but the legs were stiff. Dumitru knelt, opened the dog's mouth, and looked at the gums. He pulled back the fur at the neck. "What is it?" I asked. Dumitru stood and wiped his fingers on a cloth. "Not wolves, no tearing, no bite marks. It died without struggle." "That does not make sense," Iana said, voice low. Petrescu glanced around the trees. "Keep your mouths closed," he said. "No one needs panic." The lieutenant looked at Dumitru. "Poison?" "Possible," Dumitru said. "Or sickness. It could be hunger, but it looks recent." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. "Then the village may have the flu or something worse. We do not enter houses without care. Dumitru, you will stay back and tell us if we touch anything we should not." Dumitru nodded once, then adjusted the strap of his bag. We continued, and the trees opened into a shallow valley. Smoke should have been visible even from a distance. It was the season when people burned wood all day. There was none. We saw roofs first, then walls, then the line of a fence. The village sat low, grouped around a small church with a short bell tower. The fields around it were not working. A few thin cattle stood near a shed and did not lift their heads when we came near. The lieutenant raised his hand, and we stopped behind the last line of trees. He looked through binoculars, then handed them to Petrescu. Petrescu took a long look and lowered them slowly. "No people," Petrescu said. "No movement." Thomas shifted his feet. "There is movement," he said. We all watched. One of the house shutters moved inward, then outward as if pressed from behind. It happened once, then stopped. The lieutenant spoke quietly. "We go in together. No one breaks formation. No shots unless ordered." I felt my mouth go dry. I tried to think of simple reasons. Sickness, fear of outsiders, a family hiding. Then I remembered the priest's report, the smell at the well, and the dog that died without struggle. We stepped out of the trees and started down the slope toward the first fence, and the cattle turned their heads at the same time to stare at us. The fence gate was closed with a strip of rope, not a lock. Petrescu cut it with his knife and swung the gate inward. The hinge made a thin squeal that carried too far in the quiet. The cattle kept staring. One of them chewed slowly, and a strand of grass hung from its mouth. We entered the first lane between houses. The ground was packed with dirt with a thin layer of wet leaves. Several doorways were open, but the doors stood still, not moving with the wind. A wooden bucket lay on its side near a step, empty. A broom leaned against a wall. It looked like someone had set things down and never returned. The lieutenant stopped beside the nearest house and called out in a firm voice, "Army, we are here by order of the leader. Come out and speak with us." No answer. I heard only our breathing and the horses shifting behind us. He tried again, louder. "Open your doors. If you are sick, we have a doctor. If you have trouble, we can help." Still nothing. Iana leaned toward me and whispered, "Maybe they all went into the forest." "Quiet," Petrescu said without turning his head. The lieutenant motioned to Toma. Toma stepped forward and knocked on the open door frame with the side of his fist. The sound was dull. He waited, then knocked again. A child's voice came from inside, thin and rough. "Go away." The lieutenant held his posture steady. "We will not harm you. Are you alone?" Silence. Then the same voice closer to the doorway. "Go away." Dumitru stepped forward at half pace. "I am a doctor," he said. "If you are sick, I can help. Tell me what is wrong." A shadow moved at the back of the room. Then the voice spoke again. "Lower. They will hear." The lieutenant looked at Petrescu, then back at the doorway. "Who will hear?" No reply. A soft scrape came from inside like bare feet on wood. Then it stopped. Petrescu moved to the side of the doorway, so he could see part of the inside without standing in the opening. I followed his angle and saw a table, 2 stools, and a cold fireplace. The air inside looked thick. On the table was a loaf of bread cut in half. The cut surface is dark with drying. A bowl held a crust of porridge with a skin on it. The food had been left in the middle of a meal. The lieutenant made a decision quickly. "We don't force it," he said. "We secure the church and the well." Then we gather anyone willing to speak. We moved toward the center of the village. As we walked, more shutters shifted. Not many, just enough to tell me we were being watched. No faces appeared. No coughs, no crying. The village felt held in a tight hand. Near the church, the lane opened into a small square. A stone well stood there with a wooden cover set partly aside. A rope and bucket hung from a beam. The smell was stronger here. It was not the smell of animals or manure. It was sweet and sour and made my stomach tighten. Dumitru came near first and stopped short. He covered his mouth with a cloth from his bag and waved us back with his free hand. "Don't crowd," he said. "Stay upwind." The lieutenant took a step closer but kept distance. "What is it?" Dumitru pointed. The bucket on the rope was wet, and the stone edge of the well had streaked down it as if water had spilled and run. A dark stain marked the ground near the base. Petrescu bent down, held his breath, and looked at the stain without touching. "Blood?" he asked. Dumitru shook his head once. "Not fresh. Could be something else. The smell is coming from down there." Toma lifted his rifle slightly, eyes on the nearby houses. "Someone used this recently," he said. The lieutenant looked toward the church doors. They were shut. A small padlock hung from the latch, new and bright against old wood. "Why lock the church?" Ianu asked before he could stop himself. Petrescu gave him a hard look. "Because people lock what they fear losing or what they fear opening." The lieutenant turned to me. "You and Petrescu check the church doors and windows. Toma and I will cover the square. Ianu stays with Dumitru at the well. No one pulls that bucket again." I nodded and moved with Petrescu toward the church. The building was small, whitewashed with a roof of dark shingles slick from rain. The windows were narrow and set high. A faded painting of a saint sat above the main door, the face worn by weather. Petrescu tested the padlock with his hand. It was held. He looked at the latch and the wood around it. "Fresh nails," he murmured. "Someone made it stronger. Maybe to keep thieves out," I said, though it sounded weak even as it left my mouth. Petrescu didn't answer. He walked along the side wall and found a narrow window with iron bars. He pressed his face close and tried to see inside. After a moment, he stepped back. "Dark," he said, "but I can smell it. Same smell as the well." My throat tightened. "From inside the church," he nodded once. "Yes." Behind us, the lieutenant called out again, this time to the square. "Villagers of Volosaica, by order of the leader, you will come out. We will not leave until we know what has happened." A door creaked somewhere, but it did not open. Petrescu moved to the back of the church, where a small side door led to what would have been storage. That door had been nailed shut with 2 planks crossing it. The nails were driven deep. "They prepared," he said. I did not panic for one night. I tried the planks with my hand. They didn't move. "We could break it," I said. Petrescu looked at the lieutenant, then back to me. Not without cause and not without control. We returned toward the square. Dumitru was still near the well, cloth over his mouth, while Ianu stood stiffly, eyes wide. Toma and the lieutenant had shifted so their backs were near the well stone, giving them cover. The lieutenant spoke quietly. "What did you find?" Petrescu answered. "Strong doors, smell inside. Someone sealed it." The lieutenant's face tightened. "Then we need a witness." He turned toward the houses again. "I will give you 5 minutes to come out," he said. "If you do not, we will enter homes to check for the sick and the dead." That last word carried across the square. A shutter snapped closed. Then, from the same house as before, a figure stepped into the doorway. It was a boy, maybe 10 or 11, barefoot on the wet ground. He wore a thin shirt that hung loose and a wool vest too large for him. His hair was cut short and stuck in damp spikes to his forehead. His eyes looked too alert for a child who had been hiding. He stared at us, then at the rifles, then at Dumitru's bag. The lieutenant kept his hands visible and low. "Come here," he said gently. "We won't hurt you. What is your name?" The boy swallowed. His throat moved hard. "Mihi," he said. "Where are your parents, Mihi?" Dumitru asked, voice steady. The boy's gaze flicked to the church and away. "They are in the houses," he said. "In which house?" The lieutenant asked. Mihi shook his head once. "Not in a house. In the church." Petrescu's face didn't change, but I saw his grip tighten on his rifle. The lieutenant spoke carefully. "Why are they in the church?" Mihi looked down at his feet, then up again. His lips trembled, but his voice stayed controlled as if he had said these words many times in his head. "Because they died," he said. A silence followed that felt heavy. Even the horses behind us stopped shifting. Dumitru asked the next question without delay. "How did they die?" Mihi's eyes moved to the windows again. They got up after, he said. Yana made a short sound that he cut off immediately. The lieutenant kept his voice level. Tell me exactly what you saw. Mihi took one step forward, then stopped as if an invisible line held him back. They were sick first, he said. Then they were still. Then the old women said to bring them to the church because the ground was hard. And the priest said not to dig until after the frost breaks. They put them inside. They prayed. They locked it. Then at night, there were sounds like hands on wood, like people pushing. Dumitri's eyes narrowed. And the priest? Mihi's voice dropped. He went inside to pray over them. He did not come out. The lieutenant glanced at Petrescu. Petrescu's jaw tightened. And the well? I asked before I could stop myself. Mihi looked at me, and in that moment he seemed older than his years. They told us not to drink, he said. But people drink anyway. The water tastes wrong. Then they get hot. Then they sweat and shake. Then they stop. Then later they move. Petrescu stepped closer, careful not to scare the boy. Who is they? Mihi's shoulders rose slightly, then fell. The ones who are still alive. There are not many. We stay inside. We nail doors. We don't light fires. We don't make noise. Why not? The lieutenant asked. Mihi's eyes went to the church again. Because when the sounds stop in the church, he said, the sounds start at the doors. The lieutenant did not speak right away. He took a breath, slow and controlled. Mihi, he said, how many people are still alive? The boy thought for a moment. I know of 9, he said. Maybe 10. Some do not answer when we knock on the walls. Petrescu asked, walls? Mihi nodded. We knock so we don't open doors. We listen for knocks back. Dumitru closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Have any of the living been bitten or hurt by the dead? Mihi shook his head. No, they push. They hit. They stand. They wait. A low sound came from the church. It was not loud, but it carried. Wood scraping against wood. A slow thump followed, then another. It was measured, not fast. Iana's face drained of color. That is from inside, he said. The lieutenant raised his hand. No one fires, he said. No one moves unless I say. The sound stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. Petrescu spoke quietly to the lieutenant. We cannot leave the church sealed with whatever is inside. If the living are locked away, they will not last. And if what he says is true, we need to see it ourselves. The lieutenant nodded once. We open it under control. Dumitru, you stay back and watch the well. Toma covers the square. Iana stays with me. You and I, Petrescu. Mihi took a step back. Don't open it, he said. They hear the nails. The lieutenant looked at him. If we don't, more people will die, he said. Stay with Dumitru. Do not move. Mihi hesitated, then went to Dumitru's side and pressed close to him, gripping the edge of the bag. Petrescu and I returned to the church door. The padlock gleamed. Petrescu pulled out a small metal bar from the cart and wedged it carefully into the latch. He tested the wood around it. Stand to the side, he said to me. I stepped back and angled myself so I could see without being directly in front. The lieutenant and Ianu took positions a few paces behind us, rifles ready but low. Petrescu applied pressure slowly. The wood creaked. Inside, something thudded against the door from the other side. Not once but twice. Then again, as if responding. Petrescu paused. His face remained set. On 3, he said. 1. Another thud from inside closer to the latch. 2. I felt my pulse in my ears. 3. The latch tore free with a sharp crack. The door swung inward a hand's width and stopped against something solid. The smell rushed out thick and warm despite the cold air. It made my eyes water. Petrescu shoved again. The door opened wider, and what had been pressed against it slid forward and fell onto the doorway. It was a man. His clothes were those of a farmer. His face was gray and stretched. His eyes were open but not focused. His mouth hung open, lips cracked. There was no breath. His skin looked wrong, stretched and dull. Then his fingers twitched. I heard Iana suck in air sharply behind me. The man's arms dragged weakly against the stone, his head rolled to one side, his jaw moved, teeth clicking once. Hold, the lieutenant said, voice tight. The man did not rise. He did not reach. He lay there and moved in small broken motions like a body, remembering something it could not finish. Petrescu knelt just enough to see the man's chest. No breathing, he said. No pulse. The man's hand closed around the edge of the door frame. The sound of movement came from deeper inside the church. More than one source, feet dragging, bodies shifting. A low noise followed. Not a voice, not a groan, but air moving through damaged throats. The lieutenant made a decision. Petrescu, he said, ended it. Petrescu did not hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired once into the man's head at close range. The sound was sharp and deafening in the small square. The body went still. Inside the church, the sounds changed. They became faster, louder, and made multiple impacts against wood and stone. Back, the lieutenant said, close it. Petrescu and I pushed the door shut together. Something struck it from inside with force enough to shake my arms. We slammed the door and held it while the lieutenant drove a wedge back into place with the butt of his rifle. Another blow from inside shook the hinges. Get the planks, Petrescu said. Toma ran from the square with 2 of the nailed planks ripped free from the side door earlier. We crossed them over the main door and hammered them in with stones working fast. Each strike from inside came closer to the latch as if whatever was there learned where to push. When the planks held, the sounds continued but duller. We stepped back, breathing hard. The square felt smaller now, boxed in by watching houses. The lieutenant wiped his face with his sleeve. Everyone listen, he said. This is no sickness we know. The well may be poisoned or fouled. The dead are not resting. We secure the living and get them out. And the church? I asked. We contain it, he said. We do not open it again. A shout came from a house on the far side of the square, a woman's voice raw with fear. They're at the door. The lieutenant spun. Which house? A shutter flew open and a hand waved frantically. Here, please. Toma and I moved at once. The lieutenant followed with Ianin. Petrescu stayed near the church, watching the planks. We reached the house. The door shook under repeated impacts from the outside. From inside, someone sobbed. Toma pressed his shoulder against the door frame and pushed inward while I pulled nails free from a board lying nearby. Open! I shouted. Now! The door opened inward just enough for us to slip through. Inside were 3 people. An older woman holding a rosary, a man with a bandaged arm, and a girl about 16 holding a kitchen knife with both hands. The impact stopped as soon as the door opened. I slammed it shut behind us and dropped the plank into place, driving nails through with the butt of my rifle. What is out there? The girl demanded, voice shaking, but steady enough to surprise me. Later, the lieutenant said as he entered. How many here? 3, the man said. Sweat ran down his face despite the cold. They come at night. They stand until morning. Any injured? Dumitru asked, appearing at the doorway with Mihi close behind him. The man lifted his bandaged arm. I cut myself boarding the door. That's all. Dumitru checked it quickly. Keep it clean, he said. No water from the well. A thud hit the outer wall, then another farther away. They're moving, Thomas said. Petrescu's voice came from outside. Lieutenant, church is loud and there's movement between houses. The lieutenant looked at the 3 villagers. You will leave now, he said. Take nothing but coats. We're going to the road. The older woman shook her head. They follow, she said. They don't stop. They will, the lieutenant said, because we will not stop. We moved fast. House to house, we gathered the living. Some resisted, holding onto walls and furniture. Some came willingly, eyes empty with exhaustion. The knocks echoed from inside walls as people signaled each other to move. Not all answered. By the time we reached the edge of the village, we had 8 villagers with us, plus Mihi. The sounds from the church had become constant. A dull hammering that carried even as we put distance between us and it. As we reached the trees, a figure stepped out from behind a shed near the last house. It was another man like the first. He stood upright, swaying slightly. His clothes were torn. His face was slack, his eyes fixed on us without focus. Then another stepped out behind him, and another. They did not run. They walked slowly and steadily, spreading to block the path. The lieutenant raised his rifle. This is it, he said. No hesitation. I tightened my grip and aimed, knowing that if we failed here, there would be no second chance. The first shot came from Toma. He aimed carefully and fired once. The man in front dropped straight down, legs folding without resistance. The others did not react. They kept walking. I fired next, aiming for the head as Petrescu had done. The second figure fell backward, hit the ground, and lay still. The third stumbled when the body struck his legs, but did not stop. He adjusted his balance and kept moving. Keep your distance, the lieutenant said. 1 shot each. Make it count. The villagers huddled behind us, pressed close together. I heard someone praying under their breath. Mihi stood stiff, eyes fixed forward, his hands clenched at his sides. 2 more figures came out from between houses, then another from the direction of the fields. They were spreading, not rushing, but the effect was worse. They were cutting off space. Petrescu stepped up beside me and fired twice in quick succession. Both figures dropped. He moved his feet, keeping a clear line of sight, his face focused and calm. Yana hesitated. I saw it on his shoulders. He raised his rifle, lowered it, then raised it again. The figure in front of him came within 10 paces. Now, the lieutenant said sharply. Yana fired. The shot went wide and struck the shoulder. The figure turned slightly, as if pulled by the impact, then continued forward. Again, Petrescu said. Yana fired again. This time, the figure fell. More movement came from the village edge, at least a dozen now, maybe more. Some dragged one foot, some held their arms stiffly at their sides. None spoke. We began to move backward as a group, step by step toward the trees. The horses were tied near the track, already nervous. One stamped and pulled against the rope. Don't bunch, the lieutenant said. Leave space to shoot. A figure came too close on the left. I fired and missed. Petrescu fired immediately after and dropped it. I felt heat rise in my face, not from hard work, but from fear at my own mistake. Dumitru stayed behind the line, keeping the villagers moving, pushing shoulders when they froze. Keep going, he said. Don't look back. A woman stumbled and fell. I grabbed her arm and pulled her up. Her sleeve tore, but she did not cry out. Her eyes stayed forward. Another shot rang out, then another. The sound echoed through the trees and came back wrong, stretched and thin. When we reached the horses, the path narrowed. The lieutenant looked at the cart, then at the line of figures still coming. Cut the ropes, he said. We go on foot. Petrescu slashed the ties. The horses ran into the trees, dragging the cart a short distance before it tipped and stuck between two trunks. We left it. We pushed into the forest. The ground dipped and rose. Branches caught coats. The villagers struggled to keep up. The sounds behind us did not change. No running, no shouting, just steady movement. After several minutes, the trees thickened and the path split. The lieutenant chose to leave without slowing. We followed. The figures behind us began to thin, spread out by the land. That helped. We stopped briefly at a narrow gap where the ground dropped steeply. Hold here, the lieutenant said. We finished this. We took positions along the edge. The first figure appeared between the trees, then another. They came toward the gap without hesitation. The first stepped forward and fell, tumbling down the slope. The second followed. We fired until the movement stopped. The forest went quiet again, except for our breathing and the soft sounds of the villagers crying without sound. The lieutenant waited a full minute before lowering his rifle. Count, he said. Petrescu scanned the trees. None moving. We did not stay. We moved until the forest thinned and the ground leveled. By late afternoon, we reached the road. No one followed. We reached the edges of the nearest town after dark. Lamps were lit. Dogs barked. People shouted when they saw us come out from the trees with a group of villagers. The lieutenant reported directly to the local leader that night. Guards were posted on the road to Volosaica before dawn. No one was allowed to enter. 2 days later, a larger group arrived with doctors from the city. They burned the well. They burned the church with everything inside it. They burned 3 houses where no one had answered the walls. The villagers were kept separate. Some fell sick anyway. Some did not. Me stayed alive. He did not speak much after. I was questioned twice and told to write a report that avoided certain words. I did as ordered. Volosaica does not appear on newer maps. The road to it has been allowed to fade. People in the nearby town say the land there is poor and the water bad. I know what I saw. I know what we did. I still remember the sound from inside the church when the planks held and the door did not open.